They're tropical trees. And believe it or not, they're very sun sensitive, especially when they're young. So if I have a brand new 5-gallon little avocado that I buy at Home Depot or wherever, which I did, I bought my reed from Home Depot, a little guy for $30. It's so sun sensitive the first 3 or 4 years. I put an umbrella over it. There's other ways of giving it shade, but I used an umbrella. I put the umbrella over it for 4 summers. Basically, I put the umbrella up May, and I always took it down beginning of October because they're very, very easy to sunburn. The little green trunks, they get sunburned real easy. The lateral branches also, if you ever tried to grow avocado and you're inland like I am in Placentia, the little lateral branches will also turn black on the top from getting sunburned. And why is that? Because it's a tropical tree. Tropics, the sun's more intense than here. Well, where they are native, they're growing underneath taller trees that are giving them shade. So there's double, triple canopy forests in Central America and Mexico that, provide them enough shade until they get going. Once they're big enough, they don't need shade cloth or umbrellas. And I'm going to get into other methods like whitewash and other things. But once they get big enough, they'll have a big mature canopy, and they'll be able to protect themselves from the shade, from the sun. So going over avocado types, and I have 2 groups. There's a type A, there's a type B, and there's several names. Some of you have heard of many of these names that I wrote up here. Type A's in Southern California are higher oil content. They're creamier, they're buttery, more so. They're more heat tolerant. Welcome. So type A's, their flowers are unique. That in the morning, the flowers start as female. And then the following afternoon, that same flower, the following afternoon, morphs into a male flower. As opposed to B types, the flower in the afternoon starts out as a male, and the following morning it becomes female. So from male to female on the B types. And if you can have 2 trees, it's ideal if you have an A and a B because you'll get maximum pollination. Now it's proven you don't have to have an A and B. You could have an A only or a B only. And there's even certain ones that are self-pollinating, such as little Cotto, Wurtz. There's a couple of varieties that have kind of both characteristics. They'll have male and female flowers or female to male flowers. And they'll do that all at once. So those are more self-pollinating. But again, you don't have to have an A and B because nature finds a way to pollinate, especially with our bees. And speaking of which, if you want to get good pollinators around avocados, it's good to bring in African basil. It's probably the best herb I know. They're perennial. I had African basil that went 4 years. It was about 4 feet tall, maybe that big around. After about 4 years, when I planted it, it was only this big. And every day the thing was loaded with bees. Even in the rain, it had bees on it. So I planted that in proximity of my lone avocado. I have a reed, by the way. So bringing in pollination type plants like the African blue basil is excellent. There are other good pollinators as well. So let's go over the A varieties. We know of Haas. It was developed in the 1930s in La Habra, and that's probably the most famous worldwide known avocado. It's probably the only avocado you can pick here and send it anywhere in the world, China, wherever, and it's still not ripe. They'll pick them unripe, and by the time they get there, they take them out of the box and they're just starting to ripen. So they have a thick skin, kind of a purplish black skin, smaller, they're rough. Thank you, Rob, for bringing the sample. So this is what Haas avocados look like. They have a rough texture. They're usually not very large, but they are probably the world's most recognized avocado, and probably overall the #1 desired avocado, and it does fall in the A variety. So there's other types of Hass. There's one called Lamb Hass, which I know very little about. Carmen Hass can actually give you 2 crops a year. We have the Reed, which I prefer, and I put buttery because it's known for its butteriness, high oil content. And Reeds are really large, kind of like a grapefruit size. You have Gwen, Pinkerton, Mexicola, Esther, Holiday, Choquette. So these are typical A varieties that are available at many nurseries. The best grower that I know in Southern California is up in Ventura. They're called Brokaw. So Brokaw does all these varieties. And you'll have some other varieties that I didn't even write on the board. Jan Boyce, Don Galigli, Nabel. So those are good varieties that I didn't even have time to write up here. Now your B types, we have the Bacon, Fuerte, Zutano, Charwill, Kona Charwill. Charwills were originally from Australia. They had some brought to Hawaii, over to the Big Island, so they call it the Kona Charwill. Joey, Brogdon, Surprise, Marvel, Noble. Bees, they tend to be more cold tolerant. So if you're in a colder area, bees are a good choice. They have less oil, they're less buttery, but they are, if you can even say that they're sweeter, they are sweeter. Not so much sugary sweet, but they just have a slightly sweeter flavor than your A varieties. Now this is how I prefer planting trees, and I mean any tree, fruit tree, shade tree, in this case, avocado. And everybody, I would like to have, this is a picture I drew years ago. Just pass them back. This is how I believe trees should be planted. This is my grade right here. Now my root ball is above grade. I like the root ball to be about 1.5 inches above grade the day I plant it. So it's sticking up out of the ground. Well, now it's in danger of getting dried out from sun, Santa Ana winds. So I need to put mulch on top. So that's what I think, that's green. I have a hard time with colors. So that is represented as mulch because I need to protect the top of the root ball. Now when I dig my hole, I make it slightly hourglass shaped, and I recommend 3 pipes per tree. So I drew 2 in this picture. The pipes I use 3-inch pipes, and no matter how deep I go, if it's a 3-foot deep hole, a 4-foot deep hole, I make the pipes the same depth as the hole. They go from top to bottom, 3-inch, and I perforate them on 2 sides. On the top of every pipe, I put a drain grate. It's like this, so leaves don't fall through, debris. And these pipes are full of air all the time. But consider your pipes a permanent conduit for 3 things that are very important. Water, oxygen, NPK means fertilizer. Fertilizer meaning nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, NPK. So I can introduce fertilizer down these pipes. Right now, as I'm speaking, my trees at home are getting oxygen. And then we just got rain. So a lot of rain went down my pipes without me having to worry about it. Now in the summer, I could put water down my pipes with a hose. So going closer to this picture, and everybody has a illustration, I have what's called a water ring. And shifting over here, this is a top view here. And when I dig my hole, I make a square hole. There's my tree. The roots grow to the corners. This fluffy blue ring is a water ring. And the water ring, imagine a donut circumnavigating this square hole. The donut of dirt is going to retain mulch and future water. So I can fill this water ring, from here to here in the future with water. So my root ball is sitting above ground, 1.5 inches above grade. In about a year's time, that root ball is going to settle a little bit. Let it settle to grade. That's why you never plant any tree at grade level. It usually ends up settling below grade, which is not good. You want your tree to be even with the grade. This funny thing here, I call it a clamshell. I could use a water bottle, maybe bigger than this, but I could use a Gatorade bottle or a water bottle. I could cut the top off, cut the bottom off, and slit it vertically. And I'm going to open it up like a clamshell and put it around the tree trunk, because I need to pile up a bunch of mulch to protect the top of the root ball for the first year. I need to maintain a mulch layer. In about a year's time, that root ball will settle, and I could give or take that watering, or the clamshell. I could take it off down the road if I want, because I really need it for about a year, because I need to protect the trunk itself from the mulch, because you don't want to ever put mulch up against the trunk. It could rot or hurt the tree. So I have 2 pipes in the picture. I like 3. Now, to me, what's very, very important is the backfill. And we all hate our native soil. So when I dig my hole, that's mostly what's going to go back in. I recommend 85 to 90% of your native soil to go back in as a backfill. And the backfill I put in as these diagonal stripes. In fact, that's even backfill here, the water ring. I just use the native soil to make the water ring. The native soil is going back into the hole that I dug. Now, I can amend my native soil. It's very important to do so, but not too much. I'm talking 10 to 15% of several items combined. So I'm not going to go overboard and put in a lot of stuff. I don't want to burn the tree with too much fertilizer. I definitely do not ever want to put anything woody in the backfill, like a woody compost. All the woody stuff can go on the top if you want as a mulch to protect the top of the root ball the first year. In about a year's time, that mulch will disappear anyway, and the root ball does settle. So I can improve my native soil, and I could add a few little things: gypsum, rock dust, pumice, humic acid, NPK, meaning fertilizer, that has something called mycorrhizae, earthworm castings, all combined, 10 or 15% of the total backfill. So I have a big pile of native soil. I'll just mix all this stuff up, and then it's going to go back in the hole. And when I plant my tree, I'll start filling up the bottom, of course, and I'll take my shovel handle, and I like to reverse, so the shovel is up here, the handle is down here. I take the handle, the handle end of the shovel, and I just kind of tamp the soil in just to try to compact it, because it's so fluffy at this point. And then I'll add some more soil, and then I'll start compacting it. I want to go over this word, mycorrhizae, which is very important. So whenever using a fertilizer that's organic, that has mycorrhizae, which is a beneficial fungus, it's going to permanently inoculate that tree. So the avocado tree you plant this weekend, if you use something that has mycorrhizae and it touches the root ball, it's going to eventually spread and inoculate the entire tree with the symbiotic fungus. So this fungus is in the form of a spore. When the spore comes to life, well, in science, when fungus comes to life, it grows strings or mycelium or hyphae, and these strings grow out in all directions. There could be miles and miles of them, by the way, in just a small area. They'll attach to a finite root system, and the string of the mycorrhizae will go out and bring water and nutrients to the host tree. Well, it's not a one-way street, because that tree is photosynthesizing. Those leaves, which are photosynthesizing, are creating starches, sugars, and carbohydrates. So that goes to the mycorrhizae. So they feed each other. Mycorrhizae has been around for millions and millions of years. And the U.S. Forestry Department found mycorrhizae, discovered it in the 1950s, because they were cutting down trees at an alarming rate in the United States, and because of the housing boom, the GIs came back from the war, and trees were cutting down, and the houses were going up. They were running out of trees. We need to figure out how to make trees grow back fast. So they found out about mycorrhizae, which has always been God's plan. Mycorrhizae has been around for long before us, and trees and 90+% of the world's plant life utilizes and has a relationship with this fungus that can naturally occur in the soil. Unfortunately, in Southern California, we don't have a very good source of mycorrhizae naturally occurring. We have to introduce it. So places that are rich in mycorrhizae around the world tend to have high rainfall, and they have a lot of organic matter in the soil, which our native soil tends to be either sandy or clay. So the mycorrhizae, combined with a little bit of organic fertilizer, worm castings, all of these combined to very little, it's enough to really start your tree out. And once you have the mycorrhizae inoculate the root system, it could last the life of the tree. So let's say your avocado goes another 80 years or more, you never have to inoculate it again. So next year, you don't have to go out and put more mycorrhizae down. 5 years from now, you don't have to keep using mycorrhizae. Now, those of you that do gardening and grow tomatoes, and those of you that do know mycorrhizae, once I have a tomato plant or a pepper or whatever, and it's usually an annual or plant that lasts less than a year or barely over a year, when that plant is done, I yank it out. That relationship that it had with the mycorrhizae that I did introduce to it ended. So I have to reintroduce it if I plant new tomatoes or new cucumbers, whatever I'd like to grow. So this is a general model to plant trees in general on flat ground. I also came up with a little picture of what I call terracing. I have a hillside. And by the way, avocados have done traditionally very well on hillsides. I need to terrace into the slope. I cut away into it, and then I can plant my tree. These two little lines here and here represent pipes. Even if I don't use pipes, at least I can hold water and retain water. So planting avocados on slopes is actually a very good idea if you have that luxury to have a slope to plant them on, because they drain really well. They don't get standing water. So standing water does bring up a problem. Avocados are prone to something called Phytophthora. Phytophthora is root rot. And if I have an El Nino and I get 30, 40 inches of rain, right now I'm at about 14 inches since October. So we're on a good path. We have a good amount of rain this year. But if it keeps going and I get more and more rain and my soil profile gets saturated, I actually can put pipes down my feeder pipes here and suck water out with a wet and dry vacuum. So those pipes will also serve as getting excess water out if we ever have too much water. Usually on slopes, water doesn't accumulate very well. But if you do use the pipes, I can get my tree started better if I put pipes in, even on a terrace. Okay, so what we want to talk about today also is fertilizing, the nutrients, the micronutrients, sun blocking agents here, fighting insects, even grafting. So I'm going to talk about a few things here.
Yeah, just a question about so far. So you're talking about the
mycorrhizae.
Yes, thank you. Where do you get that?
We supply it. Our soils have it. Our fertilizers have it. You can even buy mycorrhizae by itself. It's probably in every garden store that you can think of now because it's that popular.
And then if you plant a tree on a terrace, where's the top of the root ball?
I do the same thing, slightly above grade. So the question is, where do you buy mycorrhizae? Pretty much every garden store that I know has it. We have it. We've been carrying it since the 1980s. And when I first heard about it, I didn't believe it, but I've been using it ever since. One weird thing about mycorrhizae, sometimes if you use it, you'll see some odd or weird colored mushrooms. Sometimes they're orange or yellow. I've seen some strange mushrooms. But don't worry about it. It builds up soil structure. It's very important to have mycorrhizae. The second question, I'm sorry, could you repeat the second question? Oh,
Planting on a terrace.
the second question, terracing. He asked if the root ball should be slightly above grade when terracing. Absolutely yes, because it'll settle in about a year. And yes, you need to put mulch and, if necessary, clamshells around the trunks. Okay. Okay. The question is
the pipes that you put down. How big are the holes that you drill in them so that the soil doesn't fill it up eventually?
okay. So my pipes are still, and I put my pipes in many years ago. They're still full of air, and I use about a 3/4 inch bit, which is about the size of my finger, and I go through two sides. So that is the question. How big are the holes on the pipes? And my answer is 3/4 inch holes all the way through both sides of the pipe.
Home Depot perforated pipe.
And it's perforated at a 90 degree. So you'll have perforations this way and this way. I prefer to go like this. That's why I buy solid drain pipe and I drill my own holes. Mycorrhizae, here it is. This little bag makes about 50 gallons of solution. So this is a soluble mycorrhizae. If you look at the back, you'll see several strains or varieties of mycorrhizae. They've identified them, and they put them into two groups. One is called ectomycorrhizae, and the other is called endomycorrhizae. And there's all the spore counts, and it's serious business. So this is quite often found in organic fertilizers, soils, or by itself like this.
Use that with everything you plant?
You can use the question is, can you use mycorrhizae with everything you plant? I would say yes, except don't bother with epiphytes. Epiphytes would be like a staghorn fern or an orchid. Yes.
Talk about the placement of the pipes from the top view diagram. Placement of the pipes from the top view diagram.
Okay, so as long as they don't touch the root ball, they could be a foot, a couple feet, 1.5 feet away from the root ball, because those are permanent.
Place them along the diagonals of your square, which bit, or across the top view. Where would you put them there?
Okay, I'd put probably one here, one here, one here.
Okay.
About like, a third of a pie. So the question was placement on pipes on the top view. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Gentleman in the back. So this mycorrhizae, the question is, do you mix it? Can you pour it? You can use it dry. This makes 50 gallons if you want to make it soluble. It's a tablespoon of this powder in a 5-gallon bucket of water. That's how it works out. And I use the soluble myself. In fact, what I'll do when I plant any tree, I'll take the tree out of the root, I'll take the root ball out of the can, out of the container, and I'll put misty water on the root ball, and then I'll lightly dust from that bag. I'll just lightly dust the mycorrhizae right on top of the root ball and the sides, and I'll even put some at the bottom of the hole, so that way it's sitting on some of it's already clung to the sides because I misted the root ball with water, and I even put some on the very top. So the mycorrhizae is going to inoculate it very quickly. Yes.
Would it make sense to add pipes to a tree that wasn't planted with them?
Great question, because the question is, can you add pipes to existing trees? And absolutely yes. Pipes, if I took an auger, obviously I like 3-inch, but you could put 2-inch, 1.5 inch, whatever you want, even 1-inch pipe. Just use an auger, drill it down, or use a post hole digger if you want to go bigger diameter like I use. what'll happen is you'll hit some roots. Inevitably, you'll hit some roots, and it's going to maybe shock the tree a little bit, but it will recover. And to me, just putting pipes in, to me, it's such a great idea to have a permanent conduit for water, for oxygen, and for nutrients. And even mycorrhizae, you have a tree that's never been inoculated, I can introduce the mycorrhizae down the pipes.
How deep would you want to go?
I go to the depth of my hole. You know,
You don't have a hole like that.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Existing trees, how deep do you go? I'd go at least 2 to 3 feet if you can on existing trees, inserting the pipes into the ground.
How close to the trunk?
In this illustration, it could be a foot, foot and a half, 2 feet away. Eventually, the root ball is going to grow into the native soil and go past those pipes, but I'll always have the assurance that I can introduce water, oxygen, and nutrients down these pipes. And as my tree does grow, my canopy will expand. This needs to expand too, what I call the watering. So I can make watering out of native soil, or one day I'll just use pavers, rocks, bricks, chicken wire, whatever. Now, as the tree matures, in about a year, you're going to start noticing a lot of leaf drops, and the leaves do shed. It's not truly a deciduous tree, but they do drop their leaves. And as this mulch disappears and my root ball ends up settling, it's very, very important to save all the leaves that fall. And if I need to expand my watering, make it bigger, let the leaves pile up. My reed avocado is only 7 years old, and I already have over a foot thick of its own leaves under the tree, under my reed avocado. And those leaves have piled up within the watering, and the watering is about the same size as the canopy of the tree. And as my tree grows, I'll have to do the same. I'll have to expand my watering, and I'll pile up more and more leaves as the tree matures and gets bigger.
So if you have all those that mulch and those leaves down there, you need to keep that clamshell or keep it away from the base of the trunk, or
I think the clamshell is important for loose, fine mulch that can rot. The avocado can take its own leaves, and I'll explain that in a second. But the leaves are so, I'm going to say they're airy. There's a lot of space between them, and they're not going to rot necessarily up against the trunk. And I've seen many orchards where the avocados are just, a foot and a half, 2 foot deep, and they're just piled up everywhere. So avocados love their own leaves, and what they do, they have big roots. Obviously trees have big roots, like we'll pretend this is a root, but connected to the big root are the hairs on my arm here. And those little hairs go everywhere under the canopy, the entire canopy. And those grow out of the ground and into the leaves. They love their own leaves. And that's what they do in nature. They thrive on their own leaves. So it's very important to pile those leaves up. So it's going to cool off the roots in the summer when it's hot. It's going to conserve moisture. And obviously, if you have enough thick leaves, you won't have any vegetative growth of, say, weeds. So you keep the weeds down, you conserve moisture, and they love their own leaves as a nutrient source. So they're kind of, in a way, they're cannibalistic. They like to eat themselves, if you will, their old leaves.
Can you add any other kind of leaves? I mean, I have a citrus tree. Anything else makes sense to put in there? Because I think if I moved in, the gardener had moved.
You could use, so the question is, could I import some type of different mulch for the time being when I plant a new tree? Sure. You could use old leaves of something else, grass clippings. I probably wouldn't use eucalyptus and things like that because eucalyptus leaves there's tannins and tannic acids. But I would use just about any woody mulch that you can buy.
No pine needle.
Pine needles have tannins too, so keep the pine needles and eucalyptus away.
What about on an
Their own leaves are the best if you can accumulate them. There is a problem with leaves because they're big. Avocado leaves, they tend to be large. And then when the wind blows, they get on the patio or they get in the swimming pool or they go places where you don't want them to, shred them up, put them under a lawnmower, and then put them back under the tree when they're little tiny pieces.
Question about the watering ring. If I have an existing tree, do I want to create a water ring around it? And if so, do I use the mulch? Do I use soil that's around it to build it up? Or
So create a watering with whatever you want. You could use, like I said, rocks, pavers, bricks. You could use native soil. And if you don't have mulch now, and let's say there's grass or something underneath it, say bye-bye to the grass, maybe lay cardboard down on top of the grass and just start importing some type of mulch until you can get the leaves collecting, because the leaves drop pretty quickly on avocados, and you'll accumulate a good layer within a year. Okay, so now we talked about the culture, what they like. They love their own leaves. They like to be shaded when they're young. So let's talk about nutrients and shading them. So right here, this is called Avo-Organic, and this is a whitewash. I just mix this with water, and I can paint the trunk on a young tree with this whitewash. And these go a step further. It's called Avo-Organic, and this, they provide an oil that repels insects and rodents, because we know squirrels like avocados, and they'll go up in the tree. So I could paint this whitewash that has oils that repel not only insects, but rodents that want to go up and eat your avocados. So these are to be dissolved in water and painted on trunks. And if necessary, if the trees are young enough, you can paint the lateral branches and protect them from getting sunburn if you don't use an umbrella or a piece of shade cloth.
You have to continue to apply that after intervals.
So the question is, you need to continually apply it? Maybe yearly, but you don't have to do it more than once a year. So here's another product. A lot of avocados use this. This is a commercial product called Surround Wettable Powder. Basically, it's like a bentonite clay, and it's a very fine micronized powder, and you put it in suspension in water, and you can swab it on right on the young avocados and protect it. It's like putting sunscreen on the avocado. Then Avo-Organic also makes ready to use if you only have one little tree and you don't need a whole lot of stuff. So ready to use in squirt bottle. This is the whitewash, and this one repels the squirrels and gives also sunburn protection.
question about the whitewash. If you're whitewashing on the top, you say you do a 1 foot swath.
I'd go vertical as high as you can. So the question was, how high do you put a whitewash? And I'm going to say as vertical as you can, as much as you can. Yes. The question is, can you use whitewash on existing trees? Absolutely. In fact, I paint all my citrus that I have in my backyard, 6 trees I have, they're whitewashed. And when I'm walking around at night, I can see them. That way I don't walk into the trees. So, but yeah, they do protect citrus trees as well. But yeah, insects don't even like whitewash. So some people will take white water-based latex or white water-based acrylic and dilute it a little bit with water, and they'll paint the trunk, and you're doing the same thing. You're making a whitewash. In Mexico, they use something they call it cal, which is actually calcium hydroxide, which is hydrated lime. It's a powder. They'll put it in water and make a slurry. They'll paint it on, and nothing want to touch that because it's so alkaline. So the insects really keep away from hydrated lime. And you could make a whitewash with hydrated lime. They do it a lot in Mexico. So now we talked about sun protection. I preferred using an umbrella. Rob back here in the back row here, he made a pipe framing system, 15 feet tall, I guess, framed about 10 avocado trees roughly. And he put shade cloth, not only on the top, but on the sides. And he did that to get his avocados growing. And now they're quite established, and now they're self-sufficient with big, thick canopies to protect themselves against the sun. And it's done very well, Rob. So all these samples are from Rob's house in Orange here, and he brought us some leaves to look at. He brought us reed, fuerte, nabel, and mexicola, and bacon. Just a side note, if anybody ever wants to grow a mexicola, which is a B variety, or I'm sorry, A variety, you can actually eat the leaves. Most avocado leaves are considered toxic, but the mexicola, they taste like anise, kind of a licorice. And in Mexico, the leaves of the mexicola are used in cuisine. So they use it in their sopes and things like that. And the fruit is black on the mexicola. Okay, we're going to talk next about feeding. Primarily, I believe avocados should be fed 3 times a year. February, right now, May, and October. So February, before flowers open, right now you'll see like on Rob's samples, he has existing, excuse me, I'm going to walk right by here. These are flower buds. He's going to have a lot of flowers, but they're not open. They usually open a month, month and a half now. Mine usually open up in April. And this is a reed. And I like fertilizing in February because the flowers are not open yet. It's not a good idea to fertilize when you have open flowers. So that's why I like February so much, because generally most avocados are forming their buds and their flowers. So February is a good month because whenever you use a nitrogen fertilizer, always the first number in the fertilizer is what's going to cause a flower drop or fruit drop. If I get a surge of growth from too much nitrogen, the flowers can drop. So it's better to fertilize before the flowers open. That way they get their nitrogen, they get a little growth surge, but at least the flowers are not open, because the flowers can drop if I use a nitrogen fertilizer at the wrong time of year. So I brought some samples of fertilizer. This one's organic. This is called True. It's a pellet, and it has organic certification with 2 groups. One is OMRI. OMRI means Organic Materials Research Institution. And this one is called California Department of Food and Agriculture Registered Organic Material. So this is certified organic, and I have some other ones that are. And our analysis is 454. And let me explain analysis. The first number is nitrogen, always. Then phosphorus is the middle number. And the last number is potassium. That's where we get NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. K on the periodic table comes up as potassium. So in that order, 454, it's got a little bit of nitrogen, a little more phosphorus, and a little bit less on the potassium. And that's fine, as long as it even says citrus/avocado on it. So does this brand here called Espoma. And this one is a 526. So they want low on the phosphorus on this one. We're finding out with with avocados that they really like 2 nutrients more than anything. They like the nitrogen, which is the first number in every fertilizer, and they're not so fond of everything else as far as the macronutrients, like the phosphorus and the potassium. But when you get into micronutrients, that's another story. Avocados need zinc. Just like citrus needs iron, all plants need iron and zinc. They have to have it. But avocados like zinc a little more than most micronutrients. So this is a supplement. This is not really a fertilizer, but it's a source of a micronutrient. So micronutrients could encompass a wide range of micronutrients: iron, zinc, manganese, copper, molybdenum, cobalt, zinc, uh, copper. There's a lot of micronutrients. Boron. Avocados need a teeny bit of boron. If you ever look at an avocado leaf that just came out this year, it just unfurled, and it has holes bored into it, not from insects, but if you see holes on a new leaf that just opened up, that's a boron deficiency. And most good avocado fertilizers have trace amounts of boron, because boron is toxic if you use too much. This is my favorite organic avocado fertilizer. So it says citrus overtly here, but right here, perfect for avocados. And one thing I have to say, it has more nitrogen, which is great because it's not fond of the phosphorus or potassium. It loves the nitrogen. It's the only organic one we have in our store that says zinc. It's got 0.5%. So this by itself, you don't have to supplement with that little bag. But if you ever need zinc, that's a great supplement. That little zinc sulfate bag, that's 0.5% here. This is 36% zinc in here. So there's a lot of zinc. Even though it's in a cruder form, the zinc will eventually be assimilated by the tree. And I would use zinc yearly. You could put it down any time, but the avocado is going to have richer oils and better flavor and better quality fruit if you do supplement with zinc, or if it's already included in your fertilizer, like this down to earth here. This is a 50-pound bag right here. I'm not going to lift it up because I'm not that strong. Here we have 16, 16, 16. So it's even, it's balanced. This is an agricultural fertilizer that is not organic. It's synthetic. And it's made by Loveland, which is out of Colorado. And Me means minor elements. So they add, right here, we got iron, manganese, and there it is, zinc. And on this label, right here, tree crops, citrus and avocado. They tell you exactly how much to use. 1 tablespoon per tree, 3 times a year. Apply it around the drip line. Young trees that are 1 to 2 years old, 2 to 8 ounces per tree, 3 times a year. You uniformly apply around the tree, canopy drip line. 2 to 7-year-old trees, 1/2 to 2 pounds per tree, 3 times a year. Mature trees, here we go, 4 to 6 pounds per tree. And we're talking old growth, big avocados. So this is much stronger than your organics, but it is synthetic. It has a higher nitrogen. It has all the phosphorus and potassium that you probably don't really need. But this is a very popular, very requested fertilizer in our store for people that have a lot of trees to feed. And they don't want to go with organic all the time just because organic adds up. So 1 50-pound bag of this could do a lot of trees. Okay, now we want to talk a little bit about pests. This is a horticultural oil. This is called Summit oil, and all it is mineral oil. And very important that it says OMRI, which it does, so it's organic. You only use 3 tablespoons of this in a gallon of water. And what oils do, they will subdue fungi that are bad, not good fungi like mycorrhizae, but bad fungi that might get up on the leaves, mildews and rusts and things like that. But most importantly, people use horticultural oil on avocados for something called a Persea mite. Well, the Latin name of avocado is Persea. And Persea mites attack specifically avocados. So mites are very, very tiny arachnids. They have 8 legs when they're mature. And they're so small, they're like dust. They're very tiny. And if you look closely with a magnifier, you can see he's got 8 legs. And what they do, they're so small, they attach usually underneath leaves. And they seem to go after haas a lot, or any hybrid of haas, like the lamb or the carmine. And haas are their number 1 target. So if you have a haas tree, and you see these little speckles underneath, or if you hold the leaf up to light, it's easy to see the speckles even on the front if you hold it up to the light. The speckles go all the way through the leaf. And those are mites making little, almost like little silk houses on the underside of the leaf. Well, what the oil does is it drowns them. So if I can dilute this in water and spray them early in the morning, cool day, cool morning, no wind, try to get all your under surface of the leaves sprayed with a horticultural oil.
Sprayer or something like that.
You could use a Hudson sprayer or a tank sprayer. You could use a backpack, like a solo backpack. Could put out 90 psi, and on a calm morning I could easily get 25-30 feet up on a big tall tree. So some sprayers are easier than others. In most cases, if it's a big tree, hose sprayers are better than your little Hudson that you pump like this, because that one's only going to put out maybe 15-20 psi, and you're not going to be able to shoot up very high. But hose sprayers will get up high, or a good commercial backpack sprayer, the ones you pump like this, and 4-gallon backpack. Okay, the other thing that as far as pestilence, I will talk again about Phytophthora, Phytophthora, Phytophthora. Phytophthora cynomomi, that's the identification of the specific pathogen. It's always been a problem with root rot, and with clay soils like I have, it kills trees. So if you are lucky and you have sandy soil, most likely you won't get it. If you have a hillside, most likely you won't get it. But on level ground like here, it's even more important to have pipes, especially if you are in a clay-prone environment, like I am in Placentia or Yorba Linda, a lot of level ground. Yorba Linda has its share of hillsides, but wherever it's level, avocados have died in large numbers in the past from heavy rains and not the soil profile not draining quick enough, because what Phytophthora is, it's a water mold. And water mold is like if water sits around too long, especially in soil, it stagnates and it grows this specific pathogen and it just rots the roots. So avocados are prone to root rot. That's why I think the pipes are such a great idea. Suck the water out if you get too much, or as I'm speaking right now, my pipes at home, they're getting air all the time. So right now my trees are getting drenched with oxygen underground with my open pipes with grates on top. So if you ever do have to fight Phytophthora, we do have a product called Subdue, Subdue, Subdue Max. But I don't want you guys to get involved with it. It's so strong. It's an ounce of this liquid in 100 gallons of water. It's very, very, very concentrated and very pricey. And it's usually available to our licensed commercial customers who do use it professionally. But there are ways of fighting Phytophthora. But just as long as you can oxygenate your soil, oxygen is the enemy of Phytophthora. And what some orchards will do, they'll put gypsum down and they'll put straw, and that creates an environment that the Phytophthora doesn't like. So the Phytophthora will still be in the soil, but it won't manifest itself, it won't spread. As long as it's in an oxygen-rich environment, it's going to go on the back burner, so to speak. Now, another problem with avocados, and Rob does a very good job growing his trees. They're very green and healthy, and I'm trying to find any sample with salt burn. Okay, so this is a little tip burn on this leaf right here. And salt is in our water. Salt tends to stay in our soils. And he's got so very little of it, I'm getting jealous. So salt being in our tap water, if I'm the tree and I'm taking in some salt from my tap water, how do I get rid of it? I push it out to my outermost extremities, the tips and margins of the leaves. So if some of you at home that have avocados that you see salt burn going on, the tree's actually protecting itself. It's shoving the salts out. And he has very little salt damage. He's been deep watering properly, and he's been getting God's rain, which is great. So again, how do I get rid of my salt? I shove it out to the tips and margins of my leaves. And, typically every year we'll start getting rain November through March, sometimes April. And salt is not in rain. In fact, rain is great because it takes the salt that's accumulated in the soil, pushes it down, 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 down past the roots. And then when we go into a drought condition, like maybe a several year drought, like 2010 to 2016 was nasty. The salts that got pushed way down from previous year's rains, they percolate back up. The salts never really go away, but they'll come up, and then you'll see all kinds of salt burn. The tree hates salt. Avocados are very sensitive to salt. You have an orange tree 10 feet away, it never shows salt burn. They can take it, but avocados hate salt. So if I ever get salt buildup, it's a couple reasons. One is our tap water. The other reason, and more importantly, is how I water. And that's going to be my last subject, is irrigation. Because to me, avocado should be deep watered infrequently. And when you get that pile of leaves as a mulch, you don't have to water so often. And if I water smart, even with bad water, because usually the rain stops in March or April, then we start irrigating in May, and it gets hot, June, July, August, September. In those months, we're using crummy water, and the salts will accumulate. But if I water smart, if I deep water infrequently, I'll minimize salt buildup in my soil. Imagine I take a glass of tap water and put it on this table for a week and watch the water evaporate. But what's on the sides of the glass? There's sodium chloride, there's calcium carbonate, there's all kinds of minerals that are dissolved in the water. They're going to accumulate. And let's say I was a bad waterer and I watered every day and I watered shallow. It's like I put very little water, I get very little penetration, and then the water evaporates and it leaves, just like on the glass, it leaves all those minerals, the sodium chloride and the calcium carbonate. It's going to build up on the top of my soil, and then I get really bad salt burn. So I can fight salt burn by deep watering infrequently with crummy water. I could depend on the rain, which is great. And the other way is gypsum. Gypsum is calcium sulfate. It makes up the drywall in your house. Uh, Gypsum is a very safe material. I'm going to say it's a supplement. And then I'm going to say the Western United States, gypsum has been the number one soil conditioner for agriculture for many, many years, because gypsum's a source of calcium, which is important for cells in plants and in fruit and the avocado. You can have calcium deficiencies in avocado. It's where the skin doesn't form all the way. So gypsum's a great thing to add, but number one, it's going to tie up and neutralize salts. It doesn't make them go away, but now they're bonded to the gypsum, and the gypsum makes the salt not so salty. So I can tie up tie up the salt with gypsum. So it's a great thing to do. Average tree, you could probably use 5 to 10 pounds if it's a mature big tree. So uh, gypsum is also very high in oxygen. Sorry. So it's calcium sulfate, and oxygen, remember, is the enemy of Phytophthora. So orchards fight Phytophthora with gypsum, but also neutralize the salts. So it's a good thing.
Question about watering. Question about watering. I've got a tree. It's been for a long time, and it's my drip line for the rest of that portion of the yard, and I've got it surrounding the tree. Part of the drip line. Is that not a bad idea? idea or a bad idea, or it doesn't matter?
I'm not a fan of drip irrigation for avocados, but if I had drip line underneath the avocado, I'd convert it from drip to micro sprinklers. So above the ground, above the leaves, above the mulch, I have little risers with mini sprinklers, mini spinners. They throw maybe 6 foot diameter, and I put enough of them matching the exact canopy of the tree, because remember, all those little hair roots are everywhere underneath the tree. And if I'm using drip, I'm only getting water in points. Now, when I irrigate my tree at home, I use a garden hose. I don't have anything sophisticated like a drip system or a timer. I'm always at home, and when I'm not at home, I'm at work. But when I'm not at work, I'm at home, and I'll just take my hose, and I will flood my entire water ring area. The whole circumference is going to get water everywhere, and I will flood it. And now that my tree's 7 years old, now I'm probably watering it. I haven't watered it since probably October. So we've gotten enough rain, but pretty soon, in another month or so, I'll start watering, probably in April or May, if the rain stops. But I will flood my tree once or twice a month. And the bigger your tree gets, the less frequently you'll need to water your tree. If I plant a new tree, I'm going to be watering that thing every other day for about a year. If I have a little 5-gallon whatever avocado. But if I have a mature tree, then now it's got a big root system, I'm going to deep water. Yes, Rob?
One of the things I like to do is the beginning of the rainy season, you get like an eighth inch of rain. I'll go out and flood my trees. It seems like when it's moist in the morning and I flood my trees, they really suck up a lot of water. And then like the end of the year, May, the last rain, a little bit of rain comes, I'll flood them during that little bit of, it just seems like environmentally, they suck up a lot of water. It's cool and a little bit moist.
So that's a good point.
I'll flood them beginning and then at the end of the rainy season.
So Rob brings up a good point. He wants to water heavily. He'll flood them only, even if he only gets an eighth of an inch in like October, or at the end of the season, like in April, he gets a tiny bit. He'll still flood them. So don't depend on just an eighth of an inch of rain. I think it's a great idea. Now, concluding about irrigation, we all experience heat waves. And my tree is 7 years old. In the last 7 years, my house has hit 118 twice. And I knew, avocados suffer tremendously from heat. So luckily, the A varieties, which my read is, A varieties are heat tolerant, more so than the B varieties. The B varieties like the coast a little better, where the A varieties, they can take the inland heat. But anyway, the night before the heat event came, and this is a few years ago, I knew it was going to get excess triple-digit heat. To me, anything over 110 is excess. And I saw that day coming, it was going to be crazy hot. So the night before, I flooded the tree. And then it was 118. The following day, I left here, I went home, and sure enough, my tree, which was not very mature at the time, it was probably 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old, the leaves are wilting. So this is a very important point. Yeah, I went and flooded it again, but I put water on top. And in most cases, let's say it's 100 degrees. You never put water on the leaves of avocado. Just imagine, here's a leaf and it's 100 degrees out. That's not excess triple digit, but it's still hot. But I put water on it, and the water is going to stay around for a while, and it's going to act like a magnifying glass. And that could actually burn the leaves. But when it's 115 or 118 or whatever, 112, I'm actually saving the tree from dehydration. So the leaf on the tree has pores, and they're called stomate or stomata. These pores have to open up. So right now the pores are closed, and then at a certain point in the day they open up, because the tree has to exhale oxygen. It has to inhale carbon dioxide. So during this process, it loses water vapor. Well, a tree doesn't care if it's 118. It's got to open up those pores. So it's going to breathe out the oxygen. It's going to suck in CO2, but at the same time, it's losing a lot of water vapor. So that's called transpiration loss. And if I could get water up on those leaves, I'm in essence creating a swamp cooler. So I'm actually lowering the temperature of the leaves. And most of us know how a swamp cooler works. When water evaporates, temperature goes down. So I'm getting the leaves wet so they could evaporate, temperature goes down, and within a half hour, the leaves went from wilting to straight out again. And this is during the heat. So I got home just in time to squirt it down. But I don't recommend doing it when it's like 90, 95, or 100. It's got to be excess triple digit heat.
So if you do water, you want to do it in the morning or afternoon rather than high noon. Get that magnification.
Right. Yeah. Those water droplets are like you take an hourglass. I did it as a kid. You burn leaves with it with the sun. You could burn things with it. But yeah, it could act like a magnifying glass. So water droplets can be detrimental if I overhead water. Yes. I'm sorry.
We've had the same 118-degree weather. First time we had it, we thought we were okay, but our tree died. Second time, what we did was we grabbed old sheets and draped it over the tree. And obviously, one sheet wasn't enough, so we safety pinned the sheets all around it. And then a couple times a day, we watered them. We sprayed the sheets with water.
Okay, so she brought up a great point. Was it a young tree?
It was a few years old, not that old.
Okay, so she had a problem with heat killing her avocado because it was relatively young. And there's many people in avocado forums. I'm a group member in one on Facebook, Southern California backyard avocado growers. And we all come up with ideas on how to shade. So this person I know takes concrete reinforcing wire, which is like 6-inch mesh, 10 gauge wire. It's usually 7 feet tall because that's how the concrete suppliers have it, and rolls. And he cut rolls around each avocado, maybe 4-foot diameter, 7 feet high, and he'd put shade cloth not only on the top, but he would wrap it along the sides. That way the morning sun is not so as intense, and especially the afternoon sun coming in from this direction is not so intense. And in essence, what you're doing is with sheet. Yeah, because rarely the point is shade cloth doesn't have to be on the north side, because generally in the northern hemisphere, the sun is always more or less to the south of us. And say June 21st, we get more sun in the morning and more sun in the afternoon than the rest of the year. But the north side is usually exempt from getting too much sun or sunburn. Okay, so I think I covered all the subjects I wanted to cover. Is there any questions?
Pruning. We've got a avocado that's been in the ground. It was a 5-gallon. Been in the ground about a year. It's probably 4 foot tall. Is there anything we should be doing to just let it grow any way?
So the question is, a young tree that's a 5-gallon.
It's a Haas.
It's a Haas. It's new, and it's only 4 feet tall. Should he prune it? And I say no. You want as much foliage on it as possible to shade itself. I still believe in an umbrella if you can, or shade cloth. But what you want is all those leaves to form, because each leaf is like a solar panel on your top of your house, or each leaf shades the tree, but also keeps the ground cool. And let's say I have some lower lying branches that don't look so good, keep them there. As the tree matures, you don't have to worry about them. You can trim those off later. But when you have a young tree, try to keep every single branch on that you can until that tree gets maybe 5 or 6 years old. Then you can start trimming it, because when it's so young and it has, I'll call it a skirt, like a low-lying long dress skirt, that's actually going to help cool it off. and cool the roots. Yes.
You said to use gypsum to counteract the salt. How would you use the gypsum and how much?
Well, I mentioned earlier how many pounds, but it's a young tree. The question is how much gypsum to use and when and how. Gypsum is a white powder or a pellet. And, if it's a young tree that's only this tall, I would say maybe a cup. It won't hurt. It won't burn. So a big tree, you're going to use 5 to 10 pounds, like I said earlier. And I like using it at the end of summer because summer is when all the salts have accumulated because we've been using crummy water. Our crummy water has salt in it. So if you had to do it, I think late summer or early fall is the best time. Spread it on, it doesn't burn. And just water it in.
So I don't have a tree, but I have limited area. Are there certain ones that are for a smaller area? And then how big of a tree should you buy so that you don't have to wait until you're 70 to get fruit?
So good question. Limited area. You can grow avocados in containers, but if you get a certain variety that are dwarf, like Holiday, Rob has a Holiday. He loves it. In fact, here's the fruit on it. How long did you get? What, 5 years before you got fruit?
About that, yeah.
So he got fruit on a Holiday, and look, I'd say they're even bigger than this. I've seen,
That's medium sized.
yeah, I've seen Holidays. They're like reeds. They get really large.
And it's a small tree.
Small dwarf tree. There's even another one called little cottle. Little cottle. So there are dwarfs out there. Yes. They'd like the ground better, but if you just don't have the space, grow it in a container. And if you ever grow avocado in a container, you're going to need to water it a lot more frequently. And I would say weekly throughout its life, unless it's raining.
Is there a certain size container that is best for avocado?
I'd grow, I would use minimum 20 gallon. Minimum. I'd go 25 to 45 if I could. This is 20 gallons here. Look at all those holes. You got to drain. So if you buy a fancy pot, it's all from China or glazed and beautiful, and it only has one big hole. That's probably not enough drainage. You might even want to drill some holes. Or you want to use that beautiful pot. I learned this trick on my own. I put 3 bricks in a beautiful pot. I'll get a real big one. Then I'll take a 20 gallon that will fit inside it, and I'll put that on top of 3 bricks on the bottom. And that way I get drainage, and my one hole never gets clogged up with roots, because the roots may clog up the one single hole. So nursery pots like this, I'd rather grow an avocado in something like this. And even though this is ugly, you could still put it in a bigger ornamental pot and make it look nice. But don't just set it in there. Put 3 bricks or 4 bricks at the bottom, and there's always an air pocket, and the roots will never escape they'll never escape out of these holes. They might grow to them, but they're not going to come out and try to go somewhere else because you have an air pocket.
I have another question regarding potting. I have avocado that I put on. Some of my other trees now, I noticed as they've been in there for a few years, the soil level has gone down considerably. How do I get that soil back up?
The question is, existing container, the soil level went down. The best option is if you can lift the entire root ball, put some more soil at the bottom, and put it back. Because if I start burying the trunk with new soil, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And then how big of a tree should you buy? Does it matter before you get fruit?
Well, most nurseries do carry avocados. You'll see 15 gallon. That's usually the biggest in most cases. I remember we even had 24-inch box avocados here before. And, when you get a 15 gallon, it's already about 6 feet tall. So that's a good way to start if you want a larger avocado so you don't have to wait so many years. Because if you start with a 15, you'll probably get fruit probably within 2 to 3 years, as opposed to a 5 gallon. So my little 5 gallon reed that I planted, that's now 7 years old, I started getting fruit in the 4th year on my reed. I would imagine you could cut that time in half using a 15 gallon. So yeah, these are self-pollinating and good for containers, little Cado and Wurtz. And then I know the Holiday as well. So those are good little dwarf avocados. And they're self-pollinating. In other words, they have the A and B flower characteristics.
I have a strange question. My neighbor has had avocados in her backyard for like 15, 20 years. Never seen one.
Great question.
Is it just
So we, as children, we all took the pit of an avocado. You know, we had it and we said, "Oh, this is good. What do I do with the pit?" Mom said, put 3 toothpicks in it, stick it in a glass of water, right? Boom, grows roots, then it's growing leaves. And now what do I do with it? So you take it outside and you put it in the ground. But you never know what it's going to do. It's like tossing dice. Oh. So we'll call, we'll go back to children, planting pits, because sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's like tossing dice. Sometimes it's true to the parent. Sometimes you get a new variety, like a lamb Haas or a Carmen Haas, not just the Haas. So they get pollinated from other avocados. You never know what you're going to get with a seedling. So to answer your question, why your neighbor's not getting fruit on the tree, they're not feeding it. They don't have a layer of mulch of their own leaves. They're not irrigating it maybe properly, or it's lacking zinc. Zinc is so important for fruit production with avocados. So remember the zinc, everybody. Very important. But going back to the seedling, it grows into a big, beautiful tree, and they do very well. And sometimes they don't produce. Or if they do, it's weird-looking fruit or no fruit. It's a great tree to graft on. And I did make a picture here about grafting. And that's the last subject I will cover. But Rob, you had something to add.
I know a guy in Villa Park who had an avocado tree in his house for 20, 25 years. Sold his house, it never produced fruit. And the new owner, like 2 years later, it's got a ton of fruit on it.
So he knew what to do. He watered it properly, he fertilized it.
okay, my neighbor just sold her house.
So there is hope.
Okay, the last subject. This is grafting. We'll call it grafting tape. It's parafilm, which is wax. It's a waxy tape. This is a 1-inch wide, I think 300-foot roll. You could do a lot of grafting with this. And this is we'll call it the mother branch or the receptacle branch. And this up here is the scion. So let's say that's my seedling. That seedling right here came from this. So there's my big tree that I got the fruit, and I saved the pit, and I grew the pit. I put it in the ground. Nothing's happening. I can take mama and graft it onto the baby, because that's the baby. That came from the pit. It's not doing anything. And I could take a 6-inch piece of green wood, and this should be green wood as well. As long as you make the cleft graft equal, they'll come together, and I wrap it as tight as I can with wax tape. And I can use a grafting knife to make the incision, make the V or cleft graft. And I can graft them together, and it should be vertical as much as possible. If I start grafting things on angles or that, gravity's working against you. So it's nice to do it vertically. And if you can, because it is a graft, I want to provide some shade. If it already has a nice amount of shade from its own leaves, great. If not, you can use an umbrella or something. But you graft it with a V graft or a cleft. And then right here, I start wrapping as tight as possible with this grafting tape, which is like wax. And I go all the way to the very tip, and then I twist it. And I took off the leaves. That's where these nubs are right here. So it had leaves when I took off the 6-inch scion. So that's called a scion. And I took off the leaves, and it might have little baby leaves on the end, but I don't care about that. I wrap it as tight as possible so no air escapes, no moisture escapes. And I even kind of twist it at the end. And when it finally takes, the new leaves will punch through the wax tape. And the best month for grafting avocados is right now, February. And there's a group called the California Rare Fruit Growers. They just had their scion exchange. And a lot of people love grafting because it's fun. And I could take one tree or a seedling that I grew as a kid and graft on all kinds of different avocados to it. So it's very fun and it's very easy to do. And you want to do a few grafts because expect an attrition rate where you won't get all of them to take.
For choosing the scion, like these ones that have flowers, is there like a specific thing that you're looking for?
Yeah, I would say if I had to use this as a scion, I'm going to use about, I'll probably cut this right here, get the flowers off, take all the leaves off, maybe get rid of this lateral branch just so I have a straight stem. But this scion needs to be the same diameter as the receptacle branch. And then I make the identical cut like a V, and I just put them together. And I would do several. That way you get the hang of it.
Use the end, or can you use like a middle of the?
You want to use the end because that's, we'll call it the apical meristem. It's going to want to push through. If I use a chunk, like in the middle, not good.
Would you repeat that?
For grafting,
Just right there at the end. You said use.
Use the end.
And
Not
when you
the
top
chop, not the
section
middle.
of the
So-
or the
okay. So if I decide to graft a chunk like here, I'm going to use that for grafting. The very end is what's called a meristem. The meristem is always the newest growing point. It's wanting to go out, out, out. And if I have a chunk, I don't have the meristem. It's been removed. If I have the middle piece. So it's best to use the very end and remove all the leaves. And in this case, I'd remove all these flowers and any other stems. And it should be about 6 inches long. But if you use the middle, you won't have any results with grafting.
Why do you want to graft?
Because it's fun.
To get a different
But well,
variety.
no, you could get lots of varieties. So like, again, if I'm a kid and I got that seedling, and the seedling now it's 10 years old and it's a big tree with nothing, I'm going to graft on mama onto it, or I'll take my neighbor's tree, and I have other friends. I'll graft a bunch of them onto the seedling. Or I got a perfect hoss that's doing well. Let's graft on another avocado to it just for fun.
Go A to B, B to A, graft A to B.
I would. I think it's a good idea. That way you get a mix of different flowers. So the question was, can you graft an A to a B and a B to an A? Absolutely. That way you get a good mix of flowers.
So you can have different types of avocados on one tree.
Sure. Absolutely. The question was, can you have many types? As long as you're a good grafter. And I would do many, that way you get the hang of it, because you're going to lose some. They don't always take. It's not perfect. So the more you do, the better you'll learn.
We had an apple tree last year that had 3 different kinds of apples on it. Branch was a different kind of apple.
And when you graft that certain point, does that affect anything else on the rest of the tree, or just that point on it will have?
From that point on, that is now a reed grafted to a forte or whatever, vice versa. So it's not going to take over the whole tree. Jessica. So 2 weeks ago, I did fruit trees, and I drew a good picture of air layering. Yes, you can air layer an avocado. The question is, can you air layer avocados? Absolutely, yes. So air layering is where I take a an old growth branch, it could be a branch that's several years old, maybe this thick or bigger, and I take about 1.5 to 2 inch strip of bark all the way, pretending I'm going to just strip this right here, take the bark off. So what I'm exposing is the cambium and the phloem. Now it's naked now, the bark is gone, and then I take that grafting knife there, I'm going to go like this. I'm going to rough it up. So I'm roughing up the cambium layer. So I'm kind of messing it up in a way, which is good. So now I've got roughed up, exposed cambium layer. That's part of the vascular system of a tree. Cambium makes a tree go that way. Phloem goes this way. Xylem, which you're not dealing with, goes this way. That's how a tree sucks in its nutrients and all that. But anyway, I rough up the cambium layer. Then I'm going to wrap it in moss that has a rooting hormone called endyl-3 butyric acid. And that moss, with moist moss with this rooting hormone, is now wrapped around that cut part. And then I'm going to use like a 10 mil piece of plastic. One of the best ways is have all the moss that's moist supported by almost like a hot dog bun, if you will. So this plastic 10 mil is eventually going to wrap all the way around it. But at first, it's like having a hot dog in the bun. There's the branch, that's the hot dog, and there's the bun, which is the plastic. And I got all that moss that's moist packed around it. Then I'll take 3 good sturdy zip ties and tie it super tight. So now it's airtight. And in about 3 months, it'll grow all these roots. But because of the sun, the last thing is when you do air layering. Now I've got all this all wrapped and zip tied and all that. Wrap it in tin foil. That way the sun doesn't burn the roots when they finally come out. Because in about 3 months, that bag will be filled up with roots. At that point, then I can sever it and just cut it off. Then I put it into a container. I just created a new tree from a branch. It's called air layering. And it's very commonly done. We did it out here last summer. Frank Wagner, who's a member of the South Orange County Rare Fruit Growers, he and I went out there and we did 12 branches. Every one of them took beautifully, and I took one home about 2 weeks ago. So I have a lychee from my own lychee out here now at my house. So it took beautifully, and now I've got a lychee in my yard when I'm happy about that. Because the lychee out here is just wonderful. And we air layered it 12 places. It did, every one took. So it was very easy to do.
So, okay, going a little off subject here. Back to available space. Is there, I have a narrow area, a retaining wall, and then water main and sewer and everything. Is there a certain amount of space I need to give that tree so that it doesn't attack my water main or break my retaining wall, the roots?
If you can deep water infrequently and having pipes, if you can use pipes, if you're not using a container, because a container you're not going to have that problem
Right.
with roots. But
But I also bought a house.
if you put it in the ground and I can deep water my tree in the future with pipes, that's going to encourage my pipes, for the most part, the big roots, to go deep and even go deeper. But you'll still have all those little hair roots. Those are fine. They're not dangerous. Those will eventually find their way up to the top and grow into their old leaves. But if you water infrequently and deep and you use pipes, I think you minimize damage to structure or pipes or gas lines or things like that.
Would you recommend longer pipes for situation like that?
So the question is longer pipes. I'd say the longer the better if you can. But don't fill them up with gravel or anything. Let them be full of air. Because I look at my pipes, I'll even use a flashlight. There's nothing in there. It's just air. Because the roots don't want to grow into the holes if there's air in there 99.9% of the time.
How far, like, from the fence? Space or from the structure?
Question is, how far should the avocado be from a fence? I've seen a lot of, including myself, I have a reed that's probably about 2.5 feet away from a cinder block wall. So, and I know my roots are deep and they're going to stay deep and they're not going to mess up my wall. because I don't shallow water. Because if I shallow water, I'll have a lot of big surface roots that'll be at the top, and then they tend to lift up structures, sidewalks, patios, driveways, fences.
Because we're in Anaheim Hills and we're at the bottom of the valley there. And for you, it gets really hot and you get those in winds just nonstop. And it's like, how do you put a tree out front and then still block the wind and the sun from hitting it? It's just, it's kind of
Yeah,
there.
I'm in that wind tunnel. So the question is, you know, how to protect the tree from the Santa Ana winds. You know, I happen to plant mine on against a wall that actually faces west, so it's actually protected from the Santa Ana winds. So I'd say the majority of my tree, and it's gotten 15 feet tall twice. I keep chopping it to 10 feet. I don't want it any taller than 10 feet.
So you can't keep them further down to a manageable height.
Yeah, some avocados will get over 30 feet tall if you let them.
So you can keep it.
Oh yeah, I keep topping mine. So
Was it smaller than 10 feet? Can you go lower than 10 feet or no?
I would say yes, you could. I know dwarf varieties, it's no problem, but with my reed, I don't want it ever to get over 10 feet, and I keep hacking at it, and you know, I just make sure I keep topping it. I top it once a year because it wants to grow. How do I cut it?
When do you cut it?
If I had a choice, I'd probably pick December. It's less stressful on the tree when the December is not as stressful. December, January.
Oh, yeah. We're a long ways off.
And then how do you cut it actually?
Okay, so how do you cut an avocado? You could use a saw. You could use a lopper. When I do my topping, I have a professional um, pull that has something called a Marvin head. Marvin heads are distributed throughout the country. Arborists use them. It's a bypass and it cuts 1 inch, and it's on a pole with a rope, and I just go like that and it cuts it. But if it ever did get big, then I have the other pole that has a saw, and I could saw it. But you know, I don't like sawing. I'd rather use my Marvin head on my professional pole. So that's what I use because I'm not going to get on a ladder. I have a fake hip and I don't want to fall down. Okay, another question?
Pet friendliness for any of the products to protect the tree, fertilize the tree, any of those of concern?
So the question is concerning pets. Um, choose organic. The oil is organic. I'm not worried about that with pets and children. And if I had to use a fertilizer, it would be organic. There is a problem that some organic fertilizers have certain things in them that the dog may be curious about, maybe even want to eat it. And triple 16, which I mentioned earlier, they're not going to want to eat it because it's synthetic. It's going to taste like the nasty salt, if you will. So what I wouldn't be concerned about if I used triple 16, that it would get in the paw or pad of his feet and track around, get in the house. But um, I'm not worried about the triple 16 as long as I water it in real good. Because I've used triple 16 before, and I've used the organics. I'm not sold on organics all the time, but if I'm worried about pets and children, or if my pet was prone to having cancer or something, I would definitely go with the organic.
White product that you put around the trunk to stop the squirrels and everything. Can you use that on other types of trees also?
Question is, can you use whitewash on other trees? Absolutely.
And then how would you use it on a big avocado tree that has
Well, it's probably got enough shade to protect itself. So the question is, can you use it on an avocado with an 80-year-old tree with a trunk like this? Absolutely, but you may not need to. You know,
this is for like to stop squirrels from going out and
okay. So that would be the Ivy organic. That's the They have a white one. It's white like this. And they have a tan one, which looks nicer on a, white sticks out, and maybe it's good for safety, like walking in the dark. But this is more of a natural color, this tan. So these both repel the squirrels.
Is that bottle big enough for an 80-year-old?
So this has the same type of ingredient. No way. You'd have to use several of these. You'd probably have to use maybe 5 or 6 of these just to do a tree trunk like this.
What about the can?
Well, it's concentrated, so it goes further.
Can you mix the can with a water-based paint? Make it spread further.
I would go by what the instructions say, but part of me says the question is, can I mix that with whitewash from another source? Part of me says, yeah, why not? Try it. But I'm supposed to tell you to go by the label, and whatever the label says is the law. Rob,
Trapping is really good with squirrels.
trapping. Okay, so trapping does work good, and yes.
Is that product pet friendly?
Well, once it's dry, yes.
You said also the whitewash was good for the mites. So that by just painting around it, does that go into the tree and the mites don't like it, or the mites don't crawl up the tree and get past
Well,
it? How does that work?
Well, you mean mice as in a
Mites.
spider mite?
Yeah. Well, the mites that you said would affect the leaves.
Yeah, spider mites are airborne.
Okay, so that was.
They're so small. They're in the wind. They blow, and they
Was there another mite that you were talking about that affects the spider?
Persea mite.
Right.
They're airborne.
That's airborne.
A little breeze, and go from one tree to another. So I don't think the whitewash is going to help with the mites, but it helps with, we'll say, other insects and rodents and sunburn. And if you're in Mexico and you use calcium hydroxide, which is hydrated lime, a lot of things don't like that. Ants won't even crawl up the tree. What do you use for the mites? So the mites, when you do get Persea mite, it's going to be the horticultural oil that you're going to dilute and spray in the morning on a calm, cool morning. Okay, another question?
No, I was just saying this has been really helpful.
Oh, thank you. Is there any more questions? I want to thank you. Oh,
Chris is here
one more thing.
every Saturday over in Chris's Corner. Come on in with any gardening questions.
The last thing is 1 month from today, we're having our 12th annual Tomato Festival, which is a quite large gathering. We'll have over 100 varieties of tomatoes, and we will have thousands of plants. They will all be on sale. We'll have promotions and giveaways, vendors. It's going to encompass all the way around our warehouse and out back. We're on 1.5 acres here, so we have a lot of space. We're going to have vendors with tents and awnings, and sometimes it rains, but it doesn't stop them. Folks come in, and we're very busy. And what will happen, our parking lot on both sides will be filled up. Our bank neighbors next door to us let our customers park next door, and there's lots of parking next door. So you can park next door. We have probably about 15, 16 carts that you can put your tomatoes in, and a lot of fun. So we've been doing it, and it gets better and better every year. And we can pass these out to you, or if you could grab them if you want. But
Ice cream and hot dogs.
we've done it before, Rob. But we might have a food truck. But it's our biggest event of the year, and we have our vendors doing talks. So I don't believe we've determined if we're having special speakers like me out back, because last year I did it and everybody was too interested in tomatoes to listen to me. So because it's a tomato palooza, if you will.
It is.
No, March the 21st.
It's a month from today, March 21st, Saturday. So we'd love to see you all. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.